Hey everybody, it's Tyler Skinner with Women Making Waves, and I am super excited to be here with Emily Taow. She reached out to us on Instagram, and I was really happy to be reconnected with her because I actually know her already. She's my stepdaughter's good friend in San Francisco, and we didn't realize that until after talking on Instagram for a while. But I'm really excited that she reached out for this platform. We have Women Making Waves in Tech coming up on February 18th. Tickets are on Eventbrite, but I wanted to be able to talk to Emily today about her position at the DeWinter Group out of San Jose, California, and some of the work that she's done in tech throughout her life, even starting her own platform, Puppy Love, which we'll talk about in a little bit later. And then Emily, I just want you to introduce yourself and share with us what you do, what your journey is in tech, and kind of who you are. I want women here everywhere to be able to get to know you.
Sure. Yes. Thank you, Tyler. Yes. So I specialize in mergers and acquisitions. I'm a contractor for DeWinter Group right now. My first merger and acquisition was when I was 22 years old, when I was working at Jackson State Bank in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. It was purchased by Wells Fargo. And I was the executive assistant to the CFO of the holding company at the time. I also ended up being the executive assistant for the CEO and the president during that time. It was a lot of work. And, and I was working in my 20s. So powering through, 16-hour days at my desk when when my body could do that when I was in my 20s. Can't do that anymore. But anyways, I worked there, and then they paid for me to get Series 7 licensed. I went over to work at Wells Fargo Advisors.
Wow.
Wells Fargo Advisors is a different branch of Wells Fargo in that, if you remember the firm AG Edwards was purchased by Wachovia, and then Wells Fargo purchased Wachovia in an overnight deal in 2008. And so that place was a mess because they had just gone through two mergers in the previous 5 years. One planned and one not so planned. So I worked at Wells Fargo for 5 years. Then I worked I started in accounting. I worked at Prestige Brands in Jackson thereafter. And then I moved to San Francisco in the Bay Area.
You have your Warriors jersey on, so
I do. Go Warriors.
Bay Area.
Yes, they play the Pistons tonight. Yes,
I love it.
Yes,
You're like, they play the Pistons tonight. That's so great.
Well, my family's from that area. Our aunt had a ranch 2 hours north of San Francisco. So I was originally picked that area when I was moving out of the home Idaho, Wyoming area because she was there, because I had family in the area. Love the Bay Area. Moved there after working so hard through my 20s and really killing my back.
I have a question about that really quick, if you don't mind me interrupting for a second.
Sure. Yeah,
I
absolutely.
really want people to understand this about your 20s, because I think your 20s are like a vital time for so many changes and shifts in your life. But what got you particularly like in your 20s to be like, yeah, I'm gonna like work these crazy jobs and all these opportunities? I mean, that's not typical for everybody.
No.
So what about your journey or your life kind of got you there to that point?
Well, what I can say is I was married through my 20s, and
Okay.
I also had a mortgage. I purchased a condo in 2007, right before the market crashed, and then I was stuck, with a mortgage. So I had to work very hard in order to support that for all these years. But then after the divorce, and after having worked so hard for so long, I mean, when I really left Jackson, when I was offered another position that they only offered 5 days off in the whole year, and I'm just like, I work so hard, I can't do that. You need time off. I've been
break. Yeah.
Right. And I think it's important. I think that a big theme for me in my life has been learning to, in tech, we focus so much on our mental capacity and what our brain can do that we forget about our body. And I have had to learn this lesson over and over again, that you have to put your body first. You have to take care of your body. I was, in my 20s, I could power through 16-hour days in front of a computer, 8 days a week.
Right. No problem.
Right. But then, when I turned 29 and I start having severe back problems that
Hmm.
stopped me from being able to sit in front of those screens.
Your body said,
It,
no, no more.
yeah, no
I'm done.
more, no more. So
Wow.
I've had to learn, and I came out to San Francisco, wanting to be more creative, artistic.
Mhm.
Um, I, I went to comedy college. I went to San Francisco Comedy College. Because I wanted to perform. I went
Why did
to,
you want to perform? I'm curious. Like, what made you want to perform? Because that's a big shift. Is it because in tech you were maybe were you in a position where you felt not creative as much? And so you're like,
yes,
let me tap into that creative side. This is an opportunity
absolutely.
to do that. I'm in San Francisco. It's like tons
Yes.
of artists. It's a big artist city. There is a lot of creativity going on. So you just wanted to try that out.
Absolutely. And growing up in, in conservative areas, Idaho and Wyoming, and also working in a very conservative field, which is finance.
Yeah.
I like the term caged tiger. I felt like I had so much more of myself that I wanted to explore, but I didn't feel like I had the capacity to do that where I
Interesting.
was living. And so I moved to I've moved to the bright lights big city so that I could explore these other things that I wanted to do.
And what did you find when you were at the comedy doing your comedy improv work?
Oh,
What did you find
oh,
in yourself? Like, what did something light up? Did like a light bulb go
yes.
off and you went, "Oh my gosh, I've arrived. This is it." Did it help you? Is that how puppy love was born? Because we'll talk about that.
Oh my goodness. Yes. I mean, what
Feed-
I found and what I think it's important for every woman to find is I found my voice.
Wow.
And that's what comedians do. We use our voices, and your voice is a very powerful instrument. And people don't use it, especially not women, because we're raised in this society where women are supposed to look pretty and be quiet.
Don't use your voice. That's been more and more on honestly for my two girls, because I have two young girls.
Yeah. Yep.
Disney, and this is the thing.
Yes.
I actually I have three girls. One's a little older, as you know, in her 20s, but she's a Disney fanatic also. So we all love
Yes. Oh
Disney.
yes.
But
Yes.
Disney is what, and she always teases me, by the way, because she's like, Tyler, stop making meaning. You're overthinking the Disney movie. And I'm like, there's
I
meaning in
overthink
all the
Disney
Disney
movies.
movies. There is a
Yes,
message.
yes,
It's like, come
yes.
on, people.
Little Mermaid, she goes up to the land where they take away her voice. They're like, "Oh, you can go up there, but we're gonna take away your voice." You
Exactly.
know,
Exactly.
I overanalyze Disney as well.
Good. I'm so glad we share that in common because I thought I was crazy for a little while,
No.
but reality is we do need our voices. And that's why platforms like this exist. For me,
Yes.
that's actually one of my main purposes. And you
Mhm.
touched on it so beautifully, Emily, is like lifting up women's voices and sharing
Yes.
stories and connecting and collaborating on ideas because that's what we all are going to need to move forward in this next phase of what's happening in the world right now. So I'm
Yes.
so excited that you brought that up. And I think that's so amazing that you were able to take your knowledge and all your background and then listen to yourself and slow down and go, wait a second, my body is not loving me right now, but let me
Mhm.
let me just shift it, change it up, move, got a new perspective, you're doing all this creativity, so then what happened next?
So I originally moved to Marin in Wyoming because it's where Spirit Rock Meditation Center is located, and if you know anything about Spirit Rock, it's an insight meditation center that was started by Jack Cornfield and friends, and I had randomly picked up a book by Jack Cornfield, when I was 24 and working too hard, and didn't have much time for anything but reading, and it changed my life you know and being more involved. I volunteered at Spirit. I still volunteer at Spirit Rock. There's an event tomorrow that we're doing. There's actually an event tomorrow that's about tech, specifically about
Really?
technology,
So that
and
changed
how
you.
it. Yes. So anyhow, so yeah, I went there because of Spirit Rock. So I could zen out, after my
Yeah.
divorce. But then I ended up meeting a guy, and my priorities changed a little bit. But he owned a dog daycare center in San Fran
Okay.
in Marin. And I brought my dog in there one day because I was going to a retreat at Spirit Rock. And met this guy, and we ended up dating. He ended up getting injured that year, and so I ran that place for him a lot, and made it a lot more efficient, ran his dog business for him. So I had background in the dog business prior to starting Puppy Love.
Yeah, and that was that how Puppy Love was born? Were you just like
Yes.
so in the dog world now that you've been
Yes.
doing this? It's amazing how life takes us on these little twists and turns, right? It's
Oh
like
yeah.
you meet somebody and you never know what's going to happen. You meet someone and
No.
then all of a sudden your life just is like whoosh, off into the next
Right.
stratosphere of something else that you never thought you were going to be doing. Super cool. So tell
I
yeah,
never thought I'd have. I never thought I'd have a puppy startup in San Francisco. I can guarantee
but
that.
I wanna hear about that because I think that's really interesting to say that you did that. When you reached out to us on Instagram, you're like, that was the first thing I noticed. You're like, "Oh, yeah, I did my own startup," and I'm going,
Mhm.
"What? Who is this person?" Little did I know I already knew you. That's
Yeah.
so funny.
So,
I didn't know this about
so so I recognized, so running a, a traditional dog daycare center in Marin, and it was very busy. He did a bit, he did a good business there. But I recognized the need for dog services in San Francisco. And I also moved to San Francisco with a big dog. That's my Pancha.
no
And
concept.
yeah,
Is
she's
she
chilling. She's
there?
taking a nap.
Oh,
Oh, she's here. Yeah.
let's
She's
see
a
Pancha.
Oh, see Pancha. There she
Oh,
is. She's just
there
taking
she
a little
is. What a
nap.
sweetie.
Yeah.
I miss Pancha.
So,
She was very sweet. I remember that.
she is so, oh, she's so good. But like, moving to a big city with a dog, coming from, Idaho and Wyoming, where everybody has dogs, I recognized how difficult it is to live in a
Yeah,
big city with a dog, especially when you work all the time in things like
absolutely.
tech, which
Or
everybody
a
does.
husky. Or a
Yeah.
husky.
Right. And and so, studying the business model of the kennel, which is where I worked in Marin, um, it made me realize, like, I didn't want that business model. I wanted something else. And I I was at makeup school one day, and I had been I'd been dog sitting for, I got on Rover, and
Yeah.
so I'm starting to see recognize the different apps that are already offering dog services, Rover and Wag, and I wanted a different take on that. And I randomly Googled, how to, dog training in San Francisco, just to see, or puppy training
Yeah.
in San Francisco, just to see what was out there. And I came upon this app that I had never previously heard of, which was called Thumbtack. And
Yeah.
it's big now, but nobody had heard of it. I'd never heard of it before.
Wow.
I set up a profile. It took me 10 minutes. It was probably 3 in the morning. Um, and I set up a profile. I had no pictures, no reviews, no nothing.
Wow.
And I got my first two clients that, are still with me to this day. These people,
Oh
I
my
end up being families with these people because it's their puppies.
yes.
I ended up getting my first two clients within a day.
So then you started this on Thumbtack and then it became a
Mhm.
service. So did you actually have an app or was it just a like a platform, like it was a website people could go to and they could sign up and register and all that? So you created your own company out of this.
Yes. So I mean, I do have my website, and that, utilizing text. So through Thumbtack, they're directed, you send a quote, you're directed to my website. They get to see, my page. Later, of course, I had, a million puppy videos. So I ended up making a YouTube channel called The Puppy Whisperer.
That's
And
so cute.
and I, utilizing technology for an industry, dog services, that hadn't,
You
definitely
figured
has
out a
not.
way to connect all the dots and make it work so
Right.
people were being funneled into this website and being able
Right.
to access you and know about
Yeah.
this because there wasn't a lot of training, I'm imagining, in San Francisco, right? There
None.
was dog walking
None.
services or pet sitting,
Yes.
but there
Yes.
wasn't actually training.
No. No.
So
I mean,
interesting.
there are dog trainers, but they
Yeah.
weren't doing it. They weren't doing it the way that I was doing it. And and when I had 50 dogs by the my second month in business,
Wow.
yeah. I mean, it was crazy. And I had three people working for me at the time, because it just kept growing. I had no idea you don't know what you're doing when you start a
Yeah.
business like that. You're making it up as you go along, and seeing what works and what
Were
doesn't.
you doing the comedy before this?
Before. Yeah.
Okay, so do
Yeah.
you think I have a question about this because
Yeah.
I have a thing about creativity, and
Mhm.
there's something that the reason I'm asking this is because I have a theory, but I want to just test it out really quick, if
Sure.
you'll indulge me. So, do you think that because you were doing this comedy and you were doing all of this creativity, like the juices are flowing and like all this stuff's
Mhm.
happening, you found your voice, like you said,
Mhm.
you were
Mhm.
feeling really, you'd come to this new city from this other experience, another life and chapter you lived. do you think that that opened you up to this like possibility and idea? Do you think that this is where
Absolutely.
that felt like, okay, I can do all this?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And I would say the comedy also played into my confidence
Okay.
because you know, my confidence in what I was doing, and also just being able to use, you know, it makes you a better salesperson, frankly. I mean, that's how what I felt like I was the primary you know, I mean I was the only, you know, salesperson and, you know, and you know, runner of this thing, you know, getting all these clients. I had to meet with them, and you know, they're very, you know, very wealthy clients in San Francisco. You have to know how to talk to people. And I absolutely feel like, you know, having the comedy background, and even the makeup background, you know, just having the
Yeah.
confidence in yourself and how you look and how you talk, it absolutely all feeds into the same thing.
Wow. So then take me, that's interesting. So in your, and you're in your late 20s, early 30s at this time. So take me back to like your childhood. Like when you were a little girl, was tech a part of your life? Mathematics? Because we've talked about how math
Oh,
is like kind of the, it kind of is where it starts. And a lot of times with girls, that's really, really hard in school, like the lack of confidence and some of the things that we're fed, or maybe we're not pushed in that direction, even from a very young age, to actually indulge in math. So
yep.
what for you, was that part of your life growing up, or did that happen later?
Yes. No, absolutely. Um, so when I was a kid, I was a computer nut. You know, like I learned how to code when I was in the fifth grade. You know, fortunately, I had the advantage of my, you know, my father who you know, we had a computer at home. You know, this is in the 80s, and also I mean, and he taught us all math. You know, because and he made it easy for us, which I think is, you know, anyone can learn math, and you know, and it can be easy, and math is coding, math is Excel, math is everything.
Mhm.
If you understand math, you know, there's just so much you understand if you can do math, and everyone can learn it. When I was and you know, so you know, I was a computer programmer. You know, I remember, you know, we had a color printer that my parents wouldn't get us a color printer because they were worried about, you know, how much ink that Emily would use if we got a
'Cause you
color
kept
printer,
wanting to
because she was just
print stuff.
we were just on that thing all the time.
Because
And
you loved it, because your dad influenced you that way. That sounds like
yep,
a great, awesome thing that he gave you. What a gift. You know, he's like
yes,
encouraging you in that way, which I think you're right. It starts at home. It kind of does. And
yep,
then it goes into school and other aspects of our lives. But home is where it starts. I mean, you got to
right.
encourage people. So I'm happy you got that early
I
on.
mean, I wouldn't say, I mean, but I would also say that I was also a product of my time.
Mhm.
And, you know, when I turned 13 and Britney Spears came out, you know, all my priorities changed, you know, when all of a sudden you know, you want attention from boys and that kind of thing, you know. So I think that, I mean, a lot of it, and you know, and I look back at my childhood, and I wish I had spent those years developing my computer and math skills, as opposed to the things that, you know, you know, but you know, our life turns out in a certain way for reasons. So,
Yeah, and it's
um,
funny because you mentioned that age, because I've heard from some of the other women I've talked to in tech that that seems like, when you look at statistics, that seems like the age is around that 15-year mark is
yep,
where a lot of women tend to drop away. If they were
yep,
really interested
yep,
in tech, or they were doing a lot of mathematics, they're or in the STEM, you know, STEM or
mhm,
STEAM kind of
yep,
programs, right around 15. And I don't know if it's around, it could be, but that, like you said, it could be boys and, you know,
mhm,
hormones and just changing
yep,
and
yep,
looking at your life. But it also, I'm kind of curious about that number, you know, and just
yep,
how then can we focus on women that age to kind of like get them to keep going, like to get over that
right.
little hump and just keep moving.
Right. Well, and I mean, I think that girls now have an advantage because it's not it's not the mass media. They're not all receiving the same messages like we did. You know, like we all like mass media had one channel, which was the television.
Right.
And you know, now there's a million channels, and so you can focus in on the channels you want to see. You know, and I think that's an
Filter.
advantage
Yeah.
for, yeah, I think that's an advantage for girls. I mean, they're, you know, of course they're still subject to the, you know, to a lot of the same influences that are still always going to be out there, but I also think that there are more options.
That's awesome. And then they can choose. They can make
Yep.
choices for
Right.
themselves based on what their interests are and what they want, and not maybe not feel as pressured to go
Right.
that route, like because every one of their friends are all talking about the same thing. Or
Right.
like you said, the one
Exactly.
message. Yeah,
Right.
that's really cool. That's a good point. I didn't even think about that. That's actually a
Yeah.
really good way to put it. So I guess we're going to move like flashback from that, flash forward. You were saying something about your dad, and I thought I want to touch on your dad a little bit because it seems like you have a great relationship. You talk still quite frequently. And we posted something on Women Making Waves not too long ago, and it was all these women that have historically been in mathematics or engineering or in tech, I guess, so to speak, early on. And so you instantly responded to that in the story and said, my dad's worked with some of these women in Silicon Valley in the 70s. And then I want to
Mhm.
talk about the Silicon Valley show, and some of the things that you brought up around that were really fascinating to me. So let's touch on that.
Yeah, I mean, so what was interesting to me years ago, when I was talking to my dad about what it's like in Silicon Valley now, and because my dad worked in Silicon Valley from 1976 to 1980,
Okay.
when he was a graduate at Berkeley, and he he learned to code at Berkeley. And then there's, a huge demand there. He worked at NASA for a year and a half. He was young. And so he's a very modest person. He's like, well, I was only there for 4 years, and I'm like, Dad. um, but he worked at Muffet Field, NASA Ames, in 76, 77. Then he got a job at, I wrote it down, System Control Inc. in Palo Alto, which was purchased by BP right after he left. But writing code, analyzing huge data sets, advancing technology like they do. And but the interesting thing is that when I told him that there are no women in Silicon Valley now, he was surprised. He
Was
told
he
me
really?
that his bosses, like there was, I mean, yeah, he told me his bosses were, his bosses were women, and this is in the
Wow.
70s. His bosses were women, and he said, obviously there's going to be more men working than women, especially at that time, but he said at least a quarter
So
of
there was more
the
of an
people there
equality
were
going on
women.
there. What I wonder what shifted.
Yeah, yeah,
That's fascinating to me. I'd like to
yeah.
explore that
I've
more.
thought I think about this. Mhm.
We have to do
Yeah,
research
I
on
mean, I
that.
think about it all the time, and right. I mean, and of course, it's macroeconomics, so there's a variety of factors, and a lot of it boils down to opinion. As far as what really happened, but
Mhm.
like I said, I truly think that my generation was influenced by the media a lot, in ways that
Go
our
different
parents had
direction.
no idea because they weren't the same.
Fascinating. Yeah, I love that. I love that your dad pointed that out and that he brought that to light because I'm so curious. I'm gonna definitely be researching that more, especially with this event coming up. I think that's gonna be great information to bring about and talk about because if
Like,
there
what
was that
happened? What
influence,
happened
what
in
happened to all those
30
women?
years? What happened?
Yeah, how did that
Right,
change?
right,
So that
right.
doesn't make any sense.
I mean, I watched an interesting mini documentary on like video games, like talking about how when video games first came out, equal numbers of men and women were playing video games. But then there was a shift, early 80s, where they decided to change all the marketing and market all the video games to men and to boys. And
Very
that
interesting.
that's definitely an influence right there, is that only boys play video games, and I'm like, no, they don't. I play video games.
I did too as a kid. I'm a child of the
Right,
80s.
right,
I grew up playing
absolutely, right,
Atari, and I grew up playing Sega Genesis, and I
right,
grew up playing
exactly.
Sonic and Mario
Mhm.
Brothers, and we played all kinds of video games and Mortal Kombat and all these. I loved video games when I was a kid.
Yep.
But I also, this is the interesting fact about that. Now that you're bringing that up, I also grew up in a neighborhood of all boys.
Yeah.
So for some, no, seriously, our neighborhood happened to be every house on the block randomly. My mom was like baffled. She goes, "Oh my gosh, literally our entire street is all boys and there's no girls anywhere." And so I had girlfriends from school, like at elementary school and
Yep,
everything else in junior high. But when I was at home playing and we were doing that free play
yep,
like weekends and nights, it was always hanging out
yep,
at some boy's house, neighbor boy house, and
right,
playing video games with them and
yep,
skateboarding and all these things. So I was a
right,
total tomboy growing up. And
yeah.
I definitely never saw that difference of male female until I got
Mhm.
to that age, 13, like 12, 13, just
Yep,
what you were describing. So crazy.
yep. And
We gotta work
I
on
had
it.
an older brother. I had an older brother, and of course, you're competitive as siblings. And I got to see, like I was raised the same way as he was, but I was just in a female body, so I've always got to carry, that with me as well, like, yeah, like being raised around boys, you get to see the differences.
Exactly. But you know what? That makes me even more hopeful and excited of opportunity and ways we can
Yeah,
work on this because
absolutely.
one of the nonprofits, one of our speakers for this panel, Amy Cardell, she actually sits on a board and is working with women, like girls in tech. So she has a
Hmm.
nonprofit that she works with on a national level for girls in tech to support that.
Yeah,
We're also talking to
yeah,
so many out there, like Girls Who Code and all these things. I think they're really targeting that younger age. So
yeah,
I'm interested to see where this goes to like start connecting with some of these women and some of these groups that are really working hard to get girls and women to start getting back to that. We got to
yep,
bring back the
absolutely.
70s. We got to bring back
Right.
your dad's era and bring all those women back.
Right,
It's
right. And
awesome.
they're right there. That's the thing about technology, is it's all right there and it can change in an instant, like it can change overnight. Like, you just, people have to be doing things about things, which is what I love about tech, because it's people doing things about things.
Yeah, exactly. So what's your let's see just really quick because you talked to me about a lot of things that I'm just reeling in my mind that are amazing. But what's your passion about this? Like as far as you being a woman in tech, you having experienced all these things you did and working in tech for so long,
Mhm.
what is your like wish or your desire? What do you want to see for the like going forward? Because COVID changed a lot for a lot of us. So
Yep.
going
Yep.
forward, what does that look like? What can tech do? Like, what are some
I
possibilities that
mean,
women in tech, like, how can we get them in
right.
there? And then how can
Mhm.
we support them in there to make these amazing things happen?
Well, I think that, just exactly what you're doing right here, creating communities of women, because, we still unfortunately live under this paradigm that women don't get along with each other.
Mhm.
But but that's actually false. Women support each other all the time. It's more the masculine effect that tries to separate us. And I just, I think that women need to be supportive of each other, and less competitive with each other on a personal level, because you have to understand, you succeed in groups, so you surround yourself with powerful people, you're going to be successful.
I love that. I love that. You couldn't have said it. You like took the words right out of my mouth, Emily. That was so perfect. Yeah, because that's exactly my yeah, it's the biggest purpose that I live in life is collaboration and connecting because that is what's important. We've got to link arm in arm. We have to
Yep.
link arm in arm and
Yep.
make stuff happen. We can't just
Yep.
sit idly by on the sidelines
Mhm.
anymore and just
Yeah.
allow all this, like you said, the messaging and what's going on and let everyone tell us our story. And that's
Mhm.
why I'm here doing this because I feel like your story is so, so important and what you have to give. And I appreciate you reaching out. I really do. I thought that was amazing. And you've been such a like super fan. You've like, I know you bought a ticket already, like you're coming to the event.
Yeah, I bought four
Yay.
tickets because I got to get,
Oh my
all my other besties in it too.
This
They
is
work in
gonna
tech
be
as well.
so, so fun. We're gonna have the best time. And
Yeah.
I want you to see too, because that's part of what we're doing here is like the human side of tech. That's what keeps coming up
Yeah.
is there's this other side that, like you said, the feminine side that comes in
Hmm.
that really brings about like social change and some pretty incredible
Yes.
things. So I'm excited to see where this goes. And I appreciate women like you out there willing to share your story and your voice and share with us your journey so that we can learn. We can learn and we can realize that we're just all in this together. We're all figuring it out and we're going to get
Yeah.
there. We're going to get there, but we have to break down some of these
Yep.
barriers and work together to make that happen. So awesome.
Absolutely.
Emily, thank
Absolutely.
you so much for taking some time with me today. I know you're in Idaho, right? Is what you said. You're all the way. I'm like, she's far
I
away.
am. I
That's
am shelter in place. I mean,
shelter in
yeah,
place.
you
But I'm glad you
I
joined.
miss my California. I
I
really
know you
do. But
do. You'll be back. You'll be back soon.
yeah,
You'll be back soon. California's still
yeah,
here.
I will be. I will be.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Emily,
It's
you have
still
an
there.
awesome day.
We still,
It's still here. Still here.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
No, I was just saying you
Yeah.
have an awesome day. I was letting you know that I just appreciate
Oh,
you coming on, reaching out, being a part of this, and allowing me to interview with you.
yeah. No, I appreciate what you're doing, and, anything I can do to support. I love it.
Okay. Well, we're here for you 100%. And as this community grows and builds, I hope you'll be a part of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm here.
Okay. Awesome, Emily. Well, you have a great rest of your Saturday. And we'll be posting this on
You
our
too.
Instagram
Thank you so
feed.
much, Tyler.
It's going to be at Women Making Waves. And please check it out. Our link in bio. Grab your tickets. Come see Emily talk, hear about this. So identify. You guys can connect. And if you want to follow her on Instagram at at E is an egg, and then Taow, Taow. So follow Emily,
Yes,
connect with her.
Taow.
She would love to hear from you. All right.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Emily.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Well.